There are so many different ways that people pray. For some people, it's very spontaneous. Some people have a very ritualized way of placing their body in a certain position or doing certain actions. I think all of those things are designed to bring us into a certain state of mind and of being asterisk asterisk that can allow you to express some of these deepest sentiments that are otherwise quite hard to access asterisk asterisk. Hey everyone, welcome back to Asterisk on Purpose Asterisk, the place you come to become happier, healthier, and more healed. Today's guest is one of my dearest friends of the last 20 years, but she's also one of the most talented musicians. She uses music not just to entertain, but asterisk asterisk to heal, asterisk asterisk. Genevieve is a devotional singer, writer, and artist whose voice has become a refuge for people searching for peace and spiritual grounding. Through her performances, recordings, and global workshops, Genevieve has devoted her life to helping people experience the power of mantra, meditation, and sacred sound. Her work invites us to pause, breathe, and reconnect with our inner life. Asterisk asterisk, and she's also been nominated for her very first Grammy Dove asterisk asterisk. If you're part of the Academy, this is my personal request. Go and vote for her. I'm so excited to welcome to Asterisk on Purpose Asterisk my dear friend, Genevieve Harrison. Genevieve, it's so wonderful to have you here. Asterisk asterisk, I just got a massive confidence boost from the intro. Asterisk asterisk, I just want to let people know I've known you now for like 20 years. I met you through our temple and spiritual community in London, which is where we first met, and we would have both been at college or something like that. I am so fortunate and so excited about this because sometimes I post these pictures of me on social media which are like, how it started, how it's going. Yeah. And all of those how it started pictures, so many of them were with you. So me and Janavi, for everyone who doesn't know, what we would do is we would do events together where I would speak and Janavi would lead mentor meditation. We were like a duo tag team. Yeah, exactly. And we'd travel all over England. We did events in London, Weymouth, Cambridge, Oxford. We would do events, and we've done this for years together. That was always our thing. And then since I moved to LA, Janavi comes to my house every single year and we do an event where Rad High will organize this beautiful gathering of all our friends and Janavi will lead a meditation. People are always so moved. It's pretty amazing. Thinking about being friends for 20 years and seeing our relationship has always been service based of wanting to give spiritual experiences to others. But at the same time, you lived with us during the pandemic. I did for a few months. I think that was really fun. So, I'm really excited because rarely do I get to sit with someone I've known for 20 years on the show. And I'm so excited you've been nominated for a Grammy. I mean, it's just such a monumental, historical occasion for, our whole tradition. Yeah, and to really see just how far you've taken spiritual mantra music to help people. It's such a, how does it feel? It's a huge honor. And like you said, it feels like an honor, not. It's part of our training. I think in the spiritual tradition that I've grown up in, you get an honor and it might have your name attached to it, but you think about how many people have brought you to that moment. How many hands and hearts and minds have all collaborated to, whether it's creating something or whatever it is. It's such a collective endeavor. So, I feel honored personally, but I feel honored on behalf of everybody. And yeah, it's incredible. It's amazing. It's really interesting because obviously I've seen you grow. You tour the world, you do retreat. You made an album with our dear friend Willow who was on the podcast last time. It's been amazing to watch. But I almost. This is really exciting for me because even when you know someone, when I get to sit in the interview with them, I'm always thinking I'm actually going to get to know them in a way that I don't before. So, I want to go back to your childhood and I want to ask you, asterisk asterisk, what is a childhood memory that you have that you feel defines who you are today or embodies who you are today? Asterisk asterisk. Wow. Well, I know with these kinds of things you're supposed to say the very first thing that comes into your head, and I'm seeing myself in a field near my house. I grew up outside of London, but it's not that far from the city. It's an area where there's a lot of protected farmland and stuff, so there's a lot of fields and forest, and it really feels quite rural. These fields were close to my house, so I used to love walking, cycling there, and just being in nature. Yeah, they would rotate the crops and the things that were grown in the field. And certain years there would be these incredible yellow flowers, rapeseed flowers, or sometimes called mustard flowers, and you could just kind of walk amongst them and be completely engulfed by these yellow flowers. Yellow as far as I could see. So, I don't know why that came to my head, but yeah, that's, I guess, something that's defined who I am. Connection to nature, and just finding a lot of inspiration in that. Do you still spend a lot of time in nature? I try to. Yeah, I do. Is it where you are now or when you go back home? Because I know you don't live in London. Yeah. For the last, almost 3 years we've been living in the Bay Area. So that's famous around the world for the incredible nature. So now we've got the redwood trees and the incredible California coast. So yeah, we try to be out in that environment as much as possible. But I love to, I consider myself a bit of a tree nerd. So wherever I go in the world, I'm always trying to learn about what trees are around. And yeah, it's just something that inspires me a lot. Yeah, I obviously know your parents. Your dad actually was our wedding priest for me and Rad High. He did our wedding ceremony. I've known your parents for 20 years now as well, and they've always been just so wonderful. They're so loved by our community, and everyone has such an affinity for them. Like, what do you think each of them gave you growing up that you carry with yourself today? Like, what was a quality or a value or a belief or even a mindset that you think has really stayed with you for all these years? Asterisk, they're both truth seekers. Dot asterisk, that's something that I think brought them together. I mean, they both joined the spiritual community for, I think, around a decade before they got married. So they came from their respective religious traditions that they were brought up with, and even countries. My mom's from Canada, and both of them went on a personal odyssey of a sort, searching for truth and meaning and purpose in life. So I think that courage to depart from the script that's being given, which I know a lot of people had in the 60s, 70s, a lot of young people felt emboldened to take some unconventional steps. But not only did they sort of try that on, but they've committed to that life and a deepening, I think, with every year. And to have parents that are, they're so committed to a life of service and devotion and community. And I think both of them, in their own way, my mom's my mom's the one I mean. Actually, both of them are very people. They know a lot of people, they remember people's names, but they really care about people as well. I think in our community, if they walk from point A to point B, like a 5-minute walk, they'll be stopping constantly with every person and caring about what's going on in their life at the moment. So, I think that's something that's made a deep impression on me. It's hard to follow in their footsteps in my life, and I guess in the life of all of us who have grown up with the internet and social media. We have the ability to be connected to so many more people than ever before, and it's difficult to bring that same quality of presence and attention and care to all of our interactions. But it's a kind of a gold standard that I have in my mind. Yeah, so much. It's hard to measure all the things you receive from your parents. Did you always know that you wanted to create music? Did you always know that I didn't know that I wanted to create music in a formal way, but I think I was always doing it without consciously realizing that was a thing. Like, when I was home recently, my mom had some cassette tapes that I used to record myself on. At what age? Like, probably 7, 8, 9 years old. And I had one of those Casio keyboards, and I would just put on a drum beat and I would just play. I didn't know how to play keyboard, but I had a total lack of inhibition. I'd record myself spontaneously, and I would sing a bit, tell a story, make up the story as I went along. And they were just meant for my sister to hear, like bedtime stories and stuff like that. But when I listened back, I was like, oh, I guess I was kind of making up songs and things like that. But yeah, it wasn't. Were you any good? Now when you listen back? No, it was embarrassing. It was really embarrassing. We need to hear them. I need to hear these. I think I'm going to sit them just so I can listen back and be like, wow, I've come a long way. But, I mean, I love to sing. I grew up surrounded by music. My dad and mom both love singing. My dad was really well known for his voice, and yeah, we sung as a family together. So I think it was just always around me. But I'm, quite introverted by nature, so I was never like, I want to be a singer. Yeah. What do you think? For someone who doesn't know, what's the difference between devotional mantra music and popular music or music in general? Like, how would you differentiate them? I think there are a few key differences. One is the most obvious, which is the lyrics. With mantra music specifically, a mantra is a sacred word or phrase, often containing names that refer to the supreme being, and it's repeated. So, people's first reaction is often, oh, why is that? Why are you saying the same thing over and over again? But the idea is that it's a type of purifying. I always think of a washing machine. If you had clothes that were really dirty, you put them in the washing machine a few times. So it's sound vibration that is intended to clarify, purify the heart and mind. But I think the other key difference is the intention of the music. So the intention is often prayer to connect, like you were saying at the beginning, to the sacred space within. Whereas I think, music can have all kinds of intentions. There can be the intention of the artist just to express something, to just to connect with the listener, or just to entertain. I don't mean just to minimize what that is. But the quality of it is different. You can encounter that. You can feel it. Yeah. No, I remember when I first got exposed to it, it was addictive and intoxicating in a way that was something I hadn't experienced before. I remember my friends and I would love going out to parties and clubs and things like that. And then when I heard devotional music for the first time, I was like, wait, why do I like this? You know? But it felt familiar. and it felt like it connected with a part of me that had been buried for some time or not awakened. And yeah, it is a really special quality. And now, obviously, years later, it's one of my favorite things to experience, especially when you're chanting. Or did you feel that straight away? Do you remember? Or did it take a while to appreciate it? Immediately. On one of the first retreats I went on, I felt it immediately. There was a part of it that was just fun because there's so much. There's dancing, it's such a celebration. So it's not always just sitting in meditation. Exactly. It's so festive. Yeah. So I think there's a part of that. But there were certain people. Yeah, I'll tell you later who specifically. But yeah, there were definitely experiences I had very early on that made me very convinced that the practice made sense and it was beautiful and special. But yeah, so if you were always artistic, as in you're always playing around. Yeah. Talk to me about the discovery, because so much of our community and our audience is always in the pursuit of their passion. And obviously, you're doing something you love, you're doing something that's more niche, but you're also doing it extremely successfully. This is what you do, it's what you offer to the world, and I think often we live in a world today where we think, oh, if I'm not doing something that's really mainstream, and if I'm not doing something that has millions of followers, then I can't do it, and it can't be successful, and it can't take care of me and my family. And I think there are people like yourself and others I know that have found something you love that serves other people, makes them happy, is able to, get nominated for a Grammy. Talk to me about the discovery, the early discovery of this passion. Or maybe it's not. Maybe it was always a passion, but the discovery of mastery of it. Asterisk, what did you study at college? What did you think you actually? Let's go backwards. What did you think you were going to be when you were like 11 years old? Asterisk, because I feel we all get asked that question. What did you write? I'm intrigued. I remember. So I went to school at the temple in the temple community till I was about 10 years old, and then I went to a bigger, regular school. What was that transition like? That was hard. It was really hard. Talk to me about the difference. So I didn't go to a school like that. I only ever went to public schools and grammar schools in England and never went to a spiritual school. So talk to me about what that means and then the transition from. So, the school at the temple. The place where I went to school is called Bhaktivedanta Manor. And, it's in many ways an idyllic environment. It's kind of 80 acres of beautiful country land. There's cows there, there's a beautiful lake. It was a very special environment to grow up in. The school was very small, so we had very individual attention from the teachers. There was a lot of singing, drama, art in addition to the usual things we studied. And also, we would lead the chanting in the temple once a week as a whole school. So we were still learning the national curriculum? Yes, we were doing the national curriculum. So we're doing all the regular subjects, but we would also have time where we would study texts like the Bhagavad Gita. We would learn verses and things even from 4 or 5 years old. So it's a very unique way to grow up. For me, it was all I knew. But we used to have. There would be schools that would visit the temple as part of their religious education. I think some people might not know, in the UK, religious education is compulsory in school. So you go out to places of worship and see how other people live. So we would have these kids looking through the window, like pressing their nose against the window looking at us. And we'd be like, we're not zoo animals? But they were curious. And we also didn't know what their school experience was like. But yeah, for me it was normal, and I didn't realize when I went out to a more conventional school that most kids don't learn songs in ancient Sanskrit when they're young and talk about death and reincarnation from a young age and the soul and things like that. It kind of makes you a bit weird to other kids. And I also didn't have that much exposure to pop culture. So, but you only realized that when you went to high school. You didn't know that until then. I didn't know that, but it was a bit of a rude awakening. Anyways, tell me about it. Yeah, I mean, I was confident in my world, but coming out of my world, I felt extremely vulnerable and shy. Sometimes people say, oh, when did you give yourself the name Janavi? And I'm like, no, I was given this name when I was born, and I chose to keep that as my name when I went to regular school. So then anyone who has an unusual name knows the embarrassment of like the teacher pausing when they get to your name and the kids all laugh. Or whatever those things are. Even being vegetarian at that time was quite unusual. I think it's much more common now. I just wanted to disappear. I didn't want to be commentworthy in any way. And yeah, that was really hard because I was trying to erase myself in a way so that no one would have anything to say or make fun of. Because you were coming with a different name, a different culture. Why do you have white skin, but you say you're Hindu? Your name is weird. Can we just call you something else? Why do you eat that? Paul. They're pretty innocuous questions in one sense, but kids can. Everyone knows kids can be really mean as well. I didn't even grow up around that many kids. So suddenly being in a class of 30 kids, it can be quite a sensory overload also if you're sensitive. And it's just, I think it's about also having the confidence as a young person to speak about why you grew up in this way. What are the things that you believe in? Sometimes you don't have that experience till you're a bit older. And yeah, I just didn't have the words to describe it, so I'd rather become silent. So that was really difficult. I felt like I'd been kicked out of the nest, the baby bird kicked out of the nest, and I couldn't get back to the nest because you changed through those difficult experiences. You're no longer. I remember I did wear a school uniform at the temple school, but it was a different kind of school uniform when I went to the other schools. And I remember my parents were saying, "Oh, why don't you come? There's a worship service at the temple every morning. Why don't we go before school? You can go in the temple." And I was like, "Well, I'll have to wear my uniform." And they were like, "That's okay. You can just come in your uniform and come for 10 minutes, then we'll go to school." And I was like, "I can't." And they said, "Why can't you?" And I was trying to describe it, but I was trying to say that when I put that uniform on, I have to become someone else. I can't. It's almost like I felt like I would implode or something if I tried to be that person at the temple. It was just like two different masks I had to wear, or characters, roles that I was playing. Yeah. So learning how to integrate and just be yourself in all environments, that was a real journey. Going back into the world of work was a culture shock. Yeah. And it was very, very different. And it was almost easier to go into the monastery than it was to get out, because getting out felt like, wait a minute, I've been practicing all these things for 3 years, and now I had to go to a wine and pizza tasting networking event, and I don't drink, and there's certain things I don't eat anymore, and things like that. And just having to adjust. It's embarrassing. It's hard. And I did that as an adult, so to me it was hard but somewhat easier. Yeah. But to do that as a teenager is super hard. Asterisk, what actually helped to integrate? How did you integrate these two seemingly opposite lives that seem to contradict themselves? What did you do to integrate? What did that look like? Asterisk. Yeah, I think in my school years, like till 18 or so, I just really struggled. It kind of felt like a dark tunnel those years, caused not that every day was dark, but I just didn't feel like I could find that confidence and that self assurance to feel grounded in who I am. And I kind of went back and forth in and out of. I'd go to a regular school for a year and then I would. Actually, several times I kind of made myself sick actually with anxiety. I started developing stomach issues and I'd get headaches every single day. I wouldn't eat at school. I'd save my lunch and eat it on the bus on the way home. Just like all these behaviors that were. I don't know why I was doing those things. So then I tell my parents, okay, I want to do homeschooling for a while, and I do that. But then I could tell myself that it's not like I'm super academic, but I need to be stretched a bit. Like when you're in that comfort zone of home, or you're just with friends, or your parents are telling you to do things, you don't always push yourself. So I would yearn for that environment again and go back into it, and then feel like, I don't think I can do this. And I think things really changed when I started to feel like I could take agency for myself and start to have a bit more confidence in choosing the direction of my education, which I think for many people comes around university when you're starting to hone in on what you want to do. But I was going to say, you were saying, when you were 11, what did you want to do with your life? And I remember sitting on the school bus and writing. I remember 3 long lists on the page, and they were just all these different artistic things. And I would keep going back to the lists, and every time I would learn something more about each of those creative careers, I might cross one off. And it was like florist and special effects makeup artist. And my dad would sometimes take me to do work shadowing with different people just to try and see what it was all about. But yeah, I had no idea where my journey would. Did you ever narrow it down to one? No, I never. No. That's so funny. I'm still working on that. Was it hard to go from secondary school or high school to college, like to university? Was that hard, that transition? Or was university not that hard? That was easier. That was easier because by the time I think I developed some confidence. I did my A levels very unconventionally through evening classes, which I was with older people that I found easier to be around. I just think I'd also grown up around a lot of older people. And I found I did really well studying independently a lot. And so I think that gave me a lot of confidence choosing how I was going to study. Then I finished the A levels in a year instead of 2 years. It's like a different way of approaching it. And then I started to feel like, okay, I just felt different in myself. You grow up. So I think university, college. Also, people are a lot more open-minded, I found. You start realizing that it can be cool to be different rather than just something to be made fun of. We all want to feel better, to have more energy and more focus throughout the day. That's why I co-founded Johnny, a sparkling adaptogenic drink made with powerful ingredients like ashwagandha and lion's mane. It's designed to boost your mood, support your focus, and give you natural energy, all without the crash. Get your daily mood boost with Johnny at Whole Foods Market, or head to drinkjohnny.com to find a store near you. Asterisk asterisk, did you have any wisdom from the spiritual traditional community that you carried through with you that helped you through those tough times? Or do you feel it was you were trying to keep it out so much that it didn't really even have a chance asterisk asterisk? Like, I really felt that when I went back into the world of work, the thing that I held on to the most that really changed my life, I genuinely mean it, was the verse that says, when you protect your purpose protects you. I'm translating Dharma as purpose in that regard. The original is, when you protect your Dharma protects you. And when I heard that verse, that was just profound to me. And I started to want to protect what I believed my Dharma was, rather than neglect it and reject it to move toward what the world was trying to get me to focus on. Yeah. And that acted as a real compass for me when I was feeling unsure. Was there anything for you? I'm just intrigued. Or was it so like you were like, this is so alien, I have to keep it separate, that you were just trying to avoid it? That's such a great question. I don't think I've thought about it in that way before. I don't remember actually taking strength from the spiritual tradition independently. I think my parents would try to help me with that. And I know for sure, I think on an emotional level, my mom was trying to care for me in every way possible. I mean, I really gave my parents a hard time. I'm also the eldest, so I was the first of the children to go out to school. What do you mean, you gave them a hard time? I would cry every day. I would beg not to go to school. I think they were just, parents are just trying to do the best for you. They wanted me to have opportunity. They wanted me to grow intellectually, to do well in studies and everything. And I think they were really confused about, like, how can we make her be happy and just embrace this with confidence and not just be stressed and anxious all the time? So yeah, I feel really sorry for what I put them through. But they were definitely really trying to help also from a spiritual perspective, always, and in simple and digestible ways. But I think, yeah, it was difficult for me to really integrate that at the time. Did you? So many kids who grew up in religious and spiritual communities end up leaving. Did you ever consider it? Not at the time. Not at the time. And people would always ask me that, and it was a very common question, especially from people outside of the tradition. They'd always be like, so, did you ever want to just rebel and just leave? And I would always very confidently say, no, no, I never really had that inclination. One of the reasons, I think, is that my parents have always been very broad-minded, very open to talking about anything. And I would have a lot of conversations, especially with my dad, about any theological questions, philosophical things, doubts that would come to my mind. We would always talk about it, and he's very well read, very extensively in many different traditions, so he'll always have some great insight to offer. So I didn't feel that pull. But I think what I didn't know was that doubt and crisis of faith, or looking at your tradition from a different lens, doesn't necessarily always happen in those formative teen times. Sometimes it can come later on, or sometimes it comes multiple times through your life. So it's not that I ever felt the strong urge to leave, but I definitely went through some difficult times at a later phase. It's almost like with every step further out into the wider world, it kind of demands of me to go deeper in what I practice and believe, because it's being kind of buffeted up against just these intense currents of everything that's going on in the world. Yeah. I often think about that because, when Radha and I talk about thinking about having children or whatever, and how we want to raise them where they have good spiritual values, but at the same time they have choice. And it's always hard because you're kind of like, I always believe that people who choose what they follow, and someone who's grown up in a tradition also gets that opportunity as they get older to keep choosing. And I always feel like when you choose what you follow, you're more confident about it. It generally has more power, generally speaking. But when you're raised in something, you have to choose as you get older because you choose whether this value is still yours. And the interesting thing about that is that also just applies to anyone who grew up in the normal system, because you grow up with certain beliefs your parents have, and then at one point you pause and you go, wait, do I even believe this? So your parents might have believed that you shouldn't work that hard, or you should marry a man who works hard, or your parents may have had the belief that you should always do what you love, or you should never do what you love, you should do what is safe and reliable. And I think we all go through our 20s and 30s and have reflection points where we say, well, yeah, my parents believe that, but I don't. And so it applies to all of life, but obviously very specifically aligns to someone who's grown up in a specific tradition and a specific path. Asterisk when did music go from being passion, exploration, curiosity to mastery asterisk because I think this is such an important part. I think I hear a lot of people who say, follow your passion, and I think that's okay. But if you're going to turn it into something you do professionally, the passion at one point has to turn into proficiency and mastery. When did you start to actually master your art and craft? What did that look like? I don't identify with the word master in any way. I don't mean that in a falsely humble way. I just, yeah, I feel like I'm very much scratching the surface. But I think that it happened very organically. I started to, when I was 18, I started to develop more of an independent interest in my own tradition and really engage with the mantra meditation practice garden. And also, I'd been studying the violin since I was about 10 years old, and that was always something I did basically in my bedroom and with the teacher. I never really used my instrument in a public place. I did one time, one day, in an orchestra, and I got bullied, and then I was like, I'm not going back. So it was very. I got to a point and I was like, why am I even learning this instrument? So it was only when I started playing it at the temple in the curtain and trying to improvise, I realized that, aside from just participating in this activity, musically there is something I can offer, something I can develop and refine. And initially that was my connection through the violin, that was my voice. I was too shy to sing. But I think everything actually stemmed from there, because through the violin I ended up joining a mantra music group that was forming at the time, right as I was finishing my undergraduate degree, and I did not know what I was going to do next. I studied English and creative writing, linguistics. It was very interesting to me, but I had no idea what to do with it. And this opportunity came, like a month before my graduation, to try to tour all over America and all around the world it had ended up being. So it was a no-brainer. I was like, yeah, I want to do that. And I thought that it would just be. I still felt like, well, I'll have to get a regular job. I didn't know what that was. I did get a job as a magazine editor. But I got the job. And then right when I was meant to go back and take it, I was doing this touring beforehand, and then I just wrote to them and I said, I'm sorry, I can't. I think I need to keep doing what I'm doing. It was, yeah, speaking to my soul, I guess. So it's been very organic. I think I have struggled with a lot of doubt along the way because anyone who does anything creative or artistic knows there's no assurance of any kind of ability to maintain yourself, have a livelihood with that activity. And so it's a real act of, I think, faith and courage to sort of just keep going with it year upon year. And so I was many times constantly questioning myself. Okay, so is now the point when I should get a quote unquote regular job or something that's more predictable and stable? Asterisk, do you think you experience divinity when you sing and make music in a way that you don't access through any other practice? Asterisk. I would say yes. Yeah, I do. I think it's an incredibly deep idea that you can access divinity through sound. Sound being so subtle, not requiring any instrument, any tool, just your own voice. And it just requires presence. And it's very esoteric, but I feel like anyone can experience it also. Like, we have ears to hear, a voice to use. And yeah, I remember first starting to become aware of that around. I mean, I had many incredible moments when I was a child. Sometimes people ask me what some of my earliest memories of Curtin are, and there are so many incredible times. Like, there was a festival that would happen every year. We would walk in procession through London to this huge park, Battersea Park, and there would be a festival, many tents there till late at night, and the curtain would be going all afternoon into the evening. And I just remember feeling so joyful, so exhausted, but like so filled by that experience. I think I started to really notice that, wow, there's something really special here, around 16, 17, 18, and feel like I want to come back to this. You know how you feel when you. I guess there's so many things you could liken that to, but yeah, you want to keep doing it. What have you found when people are because I think singing out loud can feel so nervous for people. Because it's this call and response where you're chanting and people are responding back, especially when you're live. What have you seen, like the transformation people have had, where they start off because you do retreats, etc. Really nervous and anxious, and they're up. And then what have you seen that turn into? Even for people who think like, I can't sing to save my life, or you don't like the sound of your voice, or whatever it may be. My singing voice, I'm very confident speaking, but I've heard you saying, I think you can sing. That's. Now I know you're lying for sure now. I have proof that last night when we were talking about that thing you were lying. But what? Yeah, what is that for you like? What have you seen? I'm intrigued for people. Anyone who's listening right now, I hope you're going to go to Spotify or Apple and type in Genevieve Harrison. And I'm looking. You've got like 134,000 monthly listeners right now. And if someone was to listen to this music, or they were going to come and see you live and you'd say, hey, everyone, sing along with me, which is very common at these events. If someone's nervous in the beginning or doesn't quite get it, how have you seen people transform over time through retreats and events? Yeah, I think it's really normal to feel nervous. I think many people, or I would even say most people, have some level of insecurity about singing out loud. I think the beautiful thing about it is that you're singing with other people. So you're not. There's no demand that you even sing really loud. You can sing very quietly, but feeling that togetherness, I mean, we all can experience that if we go to a concert or a football match. Everyone's singing the same thing together. It's empowering and it's connecting in a way that few things are of that nature. So I would even say that, some people that lead this type of music are more strident or commanding and like, come on, everyone, sing. I think being a more shy nature, I really empathize and understand how that feels to feel so nervous. So I don't expect people to push themselves in a way that feels just too uncomfortable. I always tell people if you want to sing internally, because we have an internal voice as well, you can sing back in your heart. I do that on the plane. If I'm stressed, I listen to something and then I sing back with my inner voice. But it's incredibly freeing, and I